everyone, it's Misty, and welcome to another episode of our Creative Weekly Wisdom here at Creating the Crafty Life. Today I'm going to share with you guys how you can create a letterpress look with your embossing folders. And so all you're going to need for this today is any embossing folder that you like, ones with a lot of geometrical or floral type backgrounds that completely cover are really spectacular for this, and then your favorite ink colors. You can use any colors you want. I do think like light colors are really pretty. Not super light, but you want them to be enough that they can stand out. And this is basically what we're going to be doing today. So here's some of my practice sheets that I just randomly been doing. And so you're going to get a look that's like this. So here is what it originally looks like. If I can find it. Okay, so this is your normal embossing, and to get your background, that's the debossed area, the recessed areas to have ink, there are a few ways that you can do it. So like letterpressing, which is normally where the color is into the background deep parts, you need special tools, special dyes, and a special like type of machine. But this, you can use all the stuff that you already have, and instead of maybe inking up this whole thing and then to get the raised parts to be white, you take a white ink. That's one way of doing it, but this I think is really fun, and it gives your background kind of not an even layer, and so you get like more of a distressed sort of type of look. Now the only thing I would say, do not use ink that can stain. I would say like StazOn ink. You don't really want to stain your folders unless that doesn't bother you. I'm using distress inks today, and so they're a little bit easier to clean up, and so I'm not going to clean them up right away in this video, but I do really like the distress line, so I like the vintagey colors, so that's what I'm going with. If you're curious, these colors here, this one is a walnut stain, and this one is frayed burlap. So they are similar, but one's a little bit darker. So, and these are the oxide inks. So I'm going to go ahead and use some from the original distress line, because I just don't have this in the oxide formula. So I really hope that it turns out. I'm using also my Cuttlebug today, and I will explain some things with my sandwiches for my embossing folders when we get to that part. So for this one, we are going to do a Spellbinders embossing folder, and it is, I believe it's just called Florals, and it looks like this. And then the other one is called Geometric Rings, and it looks like this. So those are the two folders we'll be using today, and I'll be making one or two cards, I'm not sure yet. So first we're gonna go with the Spellbinders ones. Now I did notice that this is the first time I've used this, was when I was doing the practice, because I just like the background, but I have never used a Spellbinders folder, so I would be a little careful because they are thicker. So you're going to want to play around before you put ink and all that kind of stuff in your folder to figure out your sandwich. What sandwich works best for your machine and your particular folder. So the way to do this is you want to lay down your embossing folder, and you want to find basically which one is the flat side and which one has the raised side. So the flat side, when you put your hand over it, it's going to be smooth and flat. The other side, you're going to feel more of the ridges and the bumpiness of the actual design. And that's the side you do not want to put ink on, because that's the side that's going to be raised, and that's the side we want to keep white. So always with the flat, smooth side, you're going to take your ink, and instead of just blotting your ink down, because if you have a juicier ink pad, you might actually be pushing that ink into your debossed areas, and you don't want that, because those are the areas that become, on this side they're debossed, but on your actual front of your paper, those are the parts that become the raised area. So you want to very gently just go around, and this does not have to be perfect, but when you're doing this motion, you're kind of dragging the ink a little bit so you get a better coverage instead of a splotchy sort of look. And you can make it as dark as you want, as light as you want, depending on how many passes you do over it. And like I use the darker ink, you can do that as well, which will make it pop a bit more. So I'm using 110 pound Nina cardstock, and this is in the Solar White. So you're gonna place it on the opposite side that you have your ink, so you don't get your ink where you don't want it. Then you're gonna very carefully fold it over and then hold it closed. And this way you make sure your paper doesn't move around. And then you're gonna take your embossing or your die cut machine, and then I'm gonna go ahead and take my sandwich. Now for me, I use the base plate because this is a Cuttlebug, and then I actually add 2 shims. Normal sandwiches, it's a base plate plus 2 B plates. But for some reason, because these are thicker, it actually works with the C plate. But I do have to add a couple shims because it's not quite enough pressure to really push that image through. So we're going to go ahead and add in the embossing folder, our C plate, and then just go ahead and run it through. And it's tight, but it's just perfect. And then, oh, this is beautiful. Then you get a nice, beautiful background, but it's not, it doesn't have, the colors aren't too dark. It gives a nice subtle kind of a look. And I really, really like it. And this was, again, the old paper, which I think is perfect. And then, like, here are the darker colors. You can just see the difference. Okay. So, we're going to start with, we're going to go ahead and do a different type of background. This one, like I said, is, the next one is more geometric, so it has less, I guess, intricacy, less in the design. It's not as busy. So I'll show you how this one looks. So here is our embossing folder. This is what the design looks like before we do it with the color. And I am going to use the same color, so I'm going to move this aside real fast. Okay. So this one is a larger embossing folder, but I'm making A2 cards, so you don't need a 5x7 embossing folder. The A2 one, as you saw, worked great. It went all the way to the edges. I am going to trim this, but you wouldn't need to for the A2 card. So I'm going to take another A2 size piece, and then we're going to ink this up. Same thing, you want to figure out which side is your top parts and which has your raised images. So this is the smooth side. You can just trust me, when you put your hands across it, you can feel the difference. This side has much more smoothness than this side. So we're going to ink up this one. I am going to ink up mostly to the edges, but I'm not going to do it perfectly since my card is not as big as this folder. And then I'm going to place it on the opposite side. I'm trying to make it straight, it's just easier for trimming purposes. And then I'm going to carefully fold right over. And then we are going to place it in our Cuttlebug. So my die cut machine is designed for the actual Cuttlebug folders, and they're a little bit thinner. So I am going to use the B plates that I'm supposed to, but I do still want to add a shim. And I think it's just because mine's a little older It's probably over a decade old by now, and it needs a shim because it's just not quite as snug as it used to be. So I'm gonna add one shim in there, and then my bead plates, and then we're gonna go ahead and run it through. Okay, and then I'll reveal it in just a second. Get all this moved out. So now we have this really pretty background, which some of the areas got a little bit splotchy, and that's only because I'm using the distress ink. If you were using an ink that doesn't bead up, the distress inks do. I wish I had it in the oxide formula because the oxides don't bead up. You can also use pigment inks and, you know, any type of other inks you have. Okay, so now we're back, and I stamped some images. So we have our backgrounds here that we are going to create 2 cards with, and if you remember, this is what, I mean, it's only been like a second for you guys, but we went from a normal embossed background to an inked letterpress look, and it just, I think it's so beautiful. And then also we did it with the geometric, and even though I could have done the inking a little better, I still think it looks really nice and distressed because it's not, you know, not perfect, and a good bit of it will get covered up and then also trimmed down. And then I did want to show you some of the other ones I was practicing and playing with that was off camera, just so you can see some of the different inks. So this one was using the normal distress ink, and that's why it's just a little bit more blotchy, not quite so even. And that's because distress ink is not meant for like stamping, so it's it just reacts and it beads up a little bit more than normal. But I wanted a light color, and I only have this really light color in my distress inks. Next, I had tried some oxide inks, so I'm going to have to pick up that light color in oxide, because oxide came out a lot more smoother, a lot more even. And this is the Walnut Stain and Frayed Burlap. I mean, they're a little similar, but the tones are just slightly different. One's a little bit more brown, one has a little bit more of a sepia type of look to it. But I like the way these came out, so I'm having lots of backgrounds. And then I was just playing, looking for a light ink, and I used my pigment ink, my VersaFine. Now I really like the pigment inks. The distress inks are wonderful, and the oxides are like partly pigment, so that's why they do stay a little bit better. But I'm going to tell you, if you use any ink that is made for stamping is really good for this. So I used a pigment ink, and the VersaFine is one of my favorite lines, and this is how it came out. I love this. This would be great for like a really fun, just because the color is more of like, it's a smoky gray, so it's kind of reminds me of Halloween. And again, you got like this little like splotched area, but I like the imperfections. I think that's what makes it fun and unique. So like I said before, if you want it more even and you don't want any imperfections, you just go over it a few times, and it should come out just the way you want it. And you know what's also fun with these? If you have like the little ink cubes, you can do different colors. You can, you know, just kind of go down. You can do like a faded look. You can do more of a mixed media sort of look, just depending on where you put your colors. I just think this is really fun and unique, and you can play around with it in so many different ways. So on to the actual card making part. I went ahead and stamped several different floral images onto some Nina Solar White cardstock. So I'm going to do some Copic coloring, and I'm probably going to just go ahead and start coloring and play some music at this point. You guys can just sit back, kind of relax, and then we'll get on to actually layering and putting our card together. I'm gonna fussy cut these out and then I'll be right back. Okay, so now I have all the flowers fussy cutted out, and I went ahead and I die cut these two stitched ovals that are going to go into the center part of our background here. And the background I also cut down. I just trimmed a 1/4 inch all the way around, and then I stamped one of the sentiments, but I wanted to show you how you can line up with the florals that you created. So I just put a combination of some like sticky back tape, I guess you would call it, double-sided tape, versus using a runner. I find that runners aren't always the strongest, and I want these to not ever peel up, especially in the mail and heat. I don't want that to happen. So I just made sure that the outer rim and then a couple pieces on in the center area had the tape, and then any other areas I wanted to put down adhesive, then I used the tape runner just to save some of these pieces, because these are kind of on the more expensive side. They're much more expensive than tape runners. But that's another good little tip, that you can use different adhesives. Like I said, I wanted the really good stuff on the edge. Okay, so there's the first card, and now we're going to go ahead and do the same thing with the second card. We're just going to start assembling everything. And I almost forgot again to do a little bit of distressing. Now, only because I forgot to do it off the card, I decided to use this tool because it helps. So what I'm going to do, my camera is really dying right now. Both my batteries are dying. So I'm just going to distress this and adhere this down, and that's it. And that will conclude our 2 cards for today. I hope you really enjoyed the process of me creating this and learned maybe some new techniques, like doing the backgrounds with the embossing folders. It's a great way to stretch those embossing folders and use them a little differently, and also a beautiful way to apply ink once you have embossed. This is probably my favorite way to add ink to an embossed background. So I will see you guys in another episode, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.